Many survivors of abuse believe that when you get out, it's the finish line. But in reality, for some people, leaving or escaping an abuser is the most difficult time. It's the moment the abuser actually realizes that they're losing access to you and to control you. And what happens then is their tactics start to change or get worse. And I want to bring this up because one of the community members in my Radiate and Rise online community finally got her ex to leave the house, but now is experiencing post-separation abuse. Now, this episode is not meant to scare anyone, especially if you're still in the relationship. It's really just meant to help you understand what you are experiencing or what to expect so that you stop thinking that you're losing your mind, because I'm here to tell you, you're not. They're just ramping up their tactics. So I just want to thank that member in my community again for bringing this topic to light, because I think it's really important and hopefully it will help you or maybe someone you know. If this doesn't directly apply to you, then maybe you could send it to a friend. So welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host and subconscious reprogramming expert and emotional abuse recovery mentor and survivor, Allison K. Dagny. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is post-separation abuse? And probably you've heard of this, but if not, I'm going to explain it. So post-separation abuse is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's just this ongoing attempt for an abuser to maintain control over you even after the relationship ends, even after you're no longer together, even after you've divorced, even after you moved out. And so, or they moved out. So it can look really different than the abuse that happened during the relationship. And there's a reason for that, because the abusers lost control. When you're still in the relationship with them, there is a power dynamic at play there where they're the ones that have all of the power and all of the control. So when you escape that dynamic, then they start to lose their footing and they start to spiral. So typically they're going to ramp up efforts to do more abuse, and it's going to look different. So a few ways that you might recognize this is they could be texting you a whole lot more and trying to call you. You might not be answering because maybe you have really good boundaries at this point, but they're going to text excessively. The text messages are not going to be nice. They're going to be very triggering, and they're going to attempt to reel you in, and they're going to attempt to get a reaction out of you and try to get whatever they can get from you. So if you've ever heard of the term gray rock, well, gray rock is you pretending to be as boring as a gray rock. And so the gray rock method is something that a lot of people will use during post-separation abuse because it helps them maintain their power. Because as soon as you get drawn into those triggering texts, as soon as they say things that could get a reaction out of you and get you to respond, then that is exactly how gray rock supports you and helps you. Because if you can be boring, it doesn't really give them what they want. So I have an example of this. A friend of mine who divorced her narcissistic ex, they share a child together, and he would message her constantly, and she would send me the screenshots, and I would read these horrible messages he would send her all the time. And she kept responding, and I kept telling her, stop responding. If he's not saying anything directly about your child or a doctor's appointment or anything like that, then you do not need to respond. But he would say things on purpose to try to trigger her, like, oh, where are you? Are you at a bar tonight? Or, oh, what are you doing? Are you hanging out with that dude again? And, just different things that would try to get a reaction out of her. And so I kept having to tell her, just ignore. Like, that's the gray rock. So excessive texting is going to be something that you're going to notice a lot when you get out of a relationship. This is part of, and I'm not saying in all cases they will do this, but for the majority of time, I hear this from a lot of people. It's the excessive texting, paragraphs, constantly messaging you, and your phone will not stop. And this can be very triggering for people, especially if you were triggered before with text messages from your ex. So after you're no longer together, then all of a sudden reinsert those triggers. Okay, other examples would be if they're saying there's constant emergencies, like maybe with them personally, like they might threaten to do something to harm themselves. They might tell you that something is wrong with the house that you moved out of. They might tell you something about finances. They might exaggerate things or make things worse than what they really are, and have these like emergency situations to try to get you to pull back into the dynamic with them. This is something that you need to be aware of, because oftentimes these quote unquote emergencies aren't really emergencies. Now, if it has to do with your child and it's truly an emergency, like obviously use your best judgment, but most of the time you can see through this. It's just an attempt. It's a tactic and a strategy to pull you back in. Another one is using the kids. So if you have kids with this person, they may use the kids as messengers. My ex was sending letters through the kids' backpacks to me, which I never read, but was doing that. Sometimes they'll tell the kids to tell you things, or tell the kids things that they want you to know. They might not even say it directly to tell you, but they might do it because they know it will upset you, to try to get a reaction out of you. So these are just like the very insidious kinds of things that abusers will do post separation. And using children obviously is very wrong. And if that is happening, then what you want to do is really kind of ignore it, so that your kids do not get brought into the mix of the drama. So, oh, okay, or yeah, like just be very vague as like in responding, and maybe change the subject, especially be aware of the age appropriateness, right? If they're 17 versus if they're 7. So use your best judgment as a parent there, but I would typically recommend that you don't bring the children into it, and that you either acknowledge, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know, or whatever, and then don't give a reaction to it. Because really what the abuser is looking for is a reaction from you, or for you to pick up the phone or to text them and say, hey, little Johnny said this, and why did you tell him that, and blah, blah, blah. And then they'll say, I never said that, and why are you accusing me? And, things get lost in translation, and maybe they misunderstood, right? So, like, you have to be aware that these are tools and tactics, and it's not a good idea to allow yourself to get pulled back in. Another thing that can happen post-separation, unfortunately, this is a very hard one, is financial abuse, or financial sabotage, or them doing things that can harm you financially, especially if you are in a separation from like a divorce and you had shared finances and things like that. This can happen, and you have to be so careful. I always recommend, like, before you do get out, if you are in a situation where you're sharing finances, that you take either screenshots or get statements from your bank, or do things like that to protect yourself at the time. Because what happens if you had some money in a bank account and then you decided to leave, and then your ex just goes and moves it somewhere else, and to account, like maybe it was in a joint account and now it's in a personal account of theirs, and you have no access to it. And maybe you have no proof that it even existed. So it's important to understand that you can't put anything past these kinds of people, especially really reactive, highly narcissistic, emotionally immature people. Toxic people will do whatever it takes to harm you, because they're angry that you left, or they're angry that you're divorcing them. So they want revenge. And so financial sabotage is huge. It's a big thing. It happens to most people after abuse. They will take out loans in both of your names. That happened to me. And right after my divorce, or right after my separation, I had got a statement in the mail, or I don't remember if it was a statement in the mail, how I found out, but I noticed that he had just recently taken out a $40,000 equity line against the house that still hadn't been divided in our divorce agreement. So I had to go through the lawyers and get all of that fixed. So just be really, really aware of what's going on financially, and be aware that they will often use these things to try to sabotage you and put you in a perilous financial position. And the worst part about this is, if you do share kids, it's like, why would they want me to be in a worse financial position when I have to support their children? Right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But People who are disordered this way don't make sense. They just want revenge and they just want to harm you. So in order for you to be okay, you have to be aware of these things to protect yourself. And in some cases, like I've even worked with people who have had to get like, what do you call it? Accountants that look into things very, very deeply. They have to pay a lot of money. I don't remember what they're called. Quick pause here. If you are listening to this and you're nodding along like, yep, this is me, and you're ready to actually shift this and not just keep managing and coping, you can apply for a free root cause call using the link in the show notes. On that call, we're going to look at where you're at right now, where you want to be emotionally, and start uncovering what is actually in the way. And then I'm going to give you my recommendations and point you in the right direction if any of my programs might feel like a fit. And if it's aligned, we'll move forward. If not, you still leave with some clarity. All right, now let's get back to the episode. Analyst, what are they called? Accountant, hold on. Forensic accountant. I don't know why that word kept escaping me, but I've had people that I know have to hire forensic accountants. So they actually go in and dig into your ex's or your partner's finances in case they happen to be hiding things, embezzling money, moving funds, places to keep you in a powerless position when it comes to finances. Maybe they want to show that they have less income so they don't have to pay you as much spousal support or child support. Like, literally, you can't put anything past these people. So that's why I want this episode to be front and center in your mind if you are somebody who is right into post-separation or maybe is going to be separated soon or is going to leave, that you need to be aware of. The next thing, and I've talked about this before in another episode 26 and 141 are both episodes on the smear campaign, so you can go back and listen to that. So if you're not familiar with what the smear campaign is or how to navigate the smear campaign, those two episodes will really, really help you. Again, episode 141 and episode 26. Now, the smear campaign you have to be aware of because oftentimes, again, when you are separated from an abuser, they're going to do whatever it takes to harm you. And that includes smearing your name. So they go on this campaign, just like how politics do, right? Mudslinging and things like that. They go around telling everybody all the horrible things about you that they can, all the things that you did to them. They usually are making themselves look like the victim and you look like the perpetrator. And so they will lie, they will make up stories, they may tell secrets about you that only they knew. They're going to do anything and everything that they can to make themselves look better. Like, really, I think that's the goal of a smear campaign. It's not, yes, it is to harm you, but it's also because they don't want other people thinking they did anything wrong or they're bad. So it's like projection. They want to put the spotlight on you so that no one suspects that it's them. So you just have to be aware of this. But those two episodes I referenced before, I would highly recommend, if you are worried about this, to go back and listen to them, because ultimately you can't change what they do. You can't keep them from saying things. Now, there are laws about slander and things like that. And if they're publicly smearing you, if you're a person in the public eye, if it is put in writing and it's not true, like things like that, obviously you'd have a leg to stand on. But if they're just going around telling friends and family things about you, you've got to know how to process that internally so it doesn't ruin your day, so it doesn't cause you to just seethe over in anger every day of your life. I had 10 pages of lies written about me by my ex and his extended family that they thought they were going to be able to submit in court, which never got submitted. But when I read them, I just laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, like some of the things that were in here they were actually really comical and funny. I couldn't even believe, like, where did they come up with some of this stuff? But they were just not true. And it's weird to read things about yourself from people who you used to know that were a big part of your life, just making up lies, just lie after lie after lie. I'm like, well, maybe he told them this, or maybe they just came up with it. I have no idea. I really don't. But the point is, it didn't impact me. It didn't cause me to spin out. I didn't freak out. I didn't get upset. I didn't react because, well, one, I use rapid reprogramming. I change my brain. I shift my perspectives. And that's what keeps me in a place of peace. So if you struggle with those kinds of things, certainly check out my website at radiate.rise.com. There's all kinds of resources and tools out there for you. Free assessments, applications to talk to me on a root cause assessment call. So whatever is, going to be helpful for you, I would just recommend go out and check that out. Okay, there's a few more here that I want to talk about. Love bombing. So most people don't think about this one, but usually when the abuser, it's either right after you leave or maybe shortly after you've left and their other tactics aren't working, they could start doing things to try to bring you back. They could start sending flowers. They could start driving by your house. They should start stopping by without any notice. They might actually go on an opposite smear campaign and talk to other people to try to get those people to come to you to say how, he messaged me, he was hurting and he was so sad, he was crying and he just wants to get back with you and he, you won't return his calls. And so there can be this like opposite kind of thing that happens as well. So I just want you to be aware of both angles. In post-separation abuse, it doesn't always mean that they're going to go full force, burn everything down, which in many cases they do. But sometimes they go the love bombing route and they try other tactics. They like, I know that, in the past when I was really nice to her, she usually, was receptive to that. So maybe they'll use that tactic on you. So you just need to be aware of that. And then with love bombing is also hoovering. So if you're not familiar with the term hoovering is in trying to suck you back in. So any and all ways that they can try to do that. So love bombing is like these grand gestures and, all of this thing. But the hoovering could be very simple and subtle. It could be like a text message that has a picture of like, I don't know, a vacation that was really memorable with the two of you and no context. It could be something manipulative like a letter that they send in the mail that just has like some word on it that meant something between the two of you, or a phrase or a quote or something like that. So they can be very sneaky, they can be very manipulative, and it's important to just be aware of what hoovering actually looks like. It could be just asking you, hey, like, do you just want to go have a drink? Do you just want to go hang out for a little while? Right? Those are all hoovering attempts too that you need to be aware of. So I just want to talk. I just want to I don't want there to be any animosity. And I'm not saying that they're not telling the truth, but you just need to be aware that they could be hoovering, okay? That's the most important thing. Next is threats. Straight up threatening you. Straight up threatening your life. Straight up threatening to destroy your life. Straight up threatening to tell people things about you. Straight up threatening to destroy you financially. Literally, some of these people will absolutely make those kinds of threats to you. Threatening to harm your animals, threatening to just literally do anything that they know you value and like hurting that, destroying that, or harming it. Your reputation at work, telling people things that you did, making threats against you. And so if that happens, which in a lot of times it does in post-separation abuse, you need to know how to deal with that. Because sometimes they will follow through on their threats and you have to know how to protect yourself. But you also don't want to be living in fear that every time they make a threat that you are thinking, I can't protect myself, I'm never going to be able to feel safe, I always have to watch my back. If you are believing things like that you don't have the capability to protect yourself even when they are threatening, then you will always be living in fear. So part of the ways that I help women who are struggling with this kind of thing is I help them deal with those, not the threats themselves, but the beliefs that the women have about themselves related to the threats. Because most of the time, yes, we have to understand the difference between a real threat and an imagined threat. So if the person is threatening to physically break your windows in your vehicle and you know that they're predisposed to physical violence, then yeah, we might want to be careful. We might want to install security cameras. We might want to have a ring.com. We might want to have 911 on speed dial, whatever it needs to be, right? But like, what if it's not that? What if it's just these idle threats of things that, for instance, my ex told me when I told him I was thinking about divorcing that he was going to take the kids from me. And I didn't believe it right away, but part of me was scared. And that part of me was something in my subconscious mind thinking that, oh yeah, the judges are going to side with him, and oh, he'll be able to manipulate them, and oh yeah, he'll be able to tell them I'm a horrible mom, and they're going to side with the father, like all these things, right? So I had to shift my mindset so that I didn't live in fear against my abuser. And I don't fear him. And I really never did after that point. So those are things that you need to be aware of post-separation abuse. Another one is court manipulation. This is a real thing. Abusers will lie. They will lie under oath. They will have their families lie under oath. Ask me how I know. They will do things, and I don't even put it past them to like pay off judges or things like that. I really don't put it past them for that. So this kind of thing happens to people all the time. And so you just need to be aware. You need to have a really good support system, an attorney, or your own personal legal education. And I don't mean like you have to go to law school. I mean, you need to self-educate. There is an episode on my podcast with Lisa Johnson of Been There, Got Out. And it's episode 218. And it talks about when your ex turns the kids against you. And Lisa has 2 books out that could really help with your situation when it involves court and post-separation abuse and all of that. So if you're not following her on Instagram, I would highly recommend it. Go listen to that podcast episode and follow the things that she says in her book, because she gives a ton of really, really helpful information. Now, I've navigated court, but I've not had to navigate a lot of court manipulation stuff. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm an expert on that. That's why I'm saying go check her out if you are experiencing that kind of thing, or if you're afraid that you might. And then lastly is just a refusal to cooperate. Now, you probably understand this because if you were with someone who is emotionally abusive, physically abusive, financially abusive, toxic, any of those things, they often refused to cooperate. They often had the mentality of my way or the highway, and they didn't really ever consider anything that you said or wanted. And this refusal to cooperate will just continue in post-separation abuse. So you might ask, hey, can we swap days with the kids? And they'll just be like, no. You might say, hey, can, little Johnny sign up for soccer? And they might be like, no. Just like so many ways that they would refuse to cooperate can definitely be part of the post-separation abuse. Now, I'm not saying that like if you are telling your ex that, you can't swap days or little Johnny can't play on the soccer team or whatever, that you're being an abuser. I'm not saying that at all. It's all very dependent on the unique circumstances of your situation. Because I will tell you, there are certain things that abusers will just flat out refuse to cooperate on just because they want to make life hard for you. That doesn't have anything to do with putting the kids first. That doesn't have anything to do with making life easy. I have a client in my community whose ex during the separation and like even post-divorce was refusing to give back furniture that she had in the decree that belonged to her. Just refusing. So if he refused to give it back, then she would have had to go to court, file a motion, right? It's just things like that. They just absolutely will do whatever they have to do to make life harder. My ex specifically took 6 months to get the 401k paperwork signed so that I could receive my 401k funds, my half. And so, like, it shouldn't take 6 months. It literally doesn't take that long. It takes, like, a couple weeks. It was just dragging the feet, refusing to cooperate. Like, that is what they do in order to make your life harder. Again, because we have to go back to this. Number one, they want to make your life harder because they're angry. They're pissed off because you ended the relationship. You took away their power and they can't control you anymore. So now, What do they got to do? Punish you. Like, that's their way of punishing you. So that's that post-separation abuse. But here's the thing. You're not with them anymore. You are not under their thumb anymore. You're not under their authoritarian rule anymore. You do not have to live like you are, even when they do these things, even when they behave in these ways. And so if you have strategies to help you to navigate that, you're going to be a lot better off. So the thing that controlling people like this cannot tolerate is loss of access to you. They want that access to you. It's not necessarily like, oh, I love you and I miss you. It's actually access to you. It's the fact that they can't influence you to get you to do what they want anymore. They can't control and tell you what to do anymore. And also, in a lot of ways, it's that they lose emotional supply. You will be their supply. And I've talked about supply before. And supply is really like if you were a drug and your ex or the abuser is the drug addict. And so essentially you are their supply. Like you give them what they need so that they can feel what they need to feel. Because you have to remember, somebody who's narcissistic, somebody who is emotionally immature, toxic, like they do not have the ability to self-regulate. They do not have the ability to self-reflect. They cannot feel empathy for people. And so when you're there, they're actually kind of stealing that from you. They're taking it from you and they're filling their bucket with it, and it makes them feel better. So every time that you cry, every time that you laugh, every time that you get angry, every time they have an impact on you, they get filled up. Their bucket gets filled. That's why they keep doing it, because it feels good. So you are the supply. And if they lose that supply, then of course they're going to freak out, right? Think about if you take drugs away from a drug addict, they're going to do anything they can do to try to get the drugs back. Okay. I want to talk about the mistake that a lot of survivors make. And one of these mistakes is that they keep trying to explain or try to get people to understand them, or try to get people to see that they were innocent, or that they want some sort of like justice or fairness. And what really happens here is it keeps you hooked into the conflict emotionally. So if you find yourself in a post-separation abuse situation and you're trying to explain to the abuser things, or you're trying to get them to understand, or you're trying to say you're innocent, you're trying to, help them see that how unfair it is, this keeps you pulled into that connection with them, not in a good way, right? You're just hooked into the conflict because it's just going to continue the conversations that will probably be heated and really non-productive. So my recommendation is usually going back to that gray rock. And then also, if you've listened to any other episode on my podcast about rewiring the brain, the subconscious mind, all of that, if you believe things like, I need to explain myself, or he needs to understand me, or I've got to prove my innocence, or think, he should understand this isn't fair, right? If you have subconscious beliefs, these are things that you've developed over time inside of the lower part of your brain that's driving everything, then of course you're going to respond to them. Of course you're going to explain. Of course you're going to try to make sure they understand you, but then you're going to get hooked into the conflict. So in order not to do that, it's not just willpower, like, oh, I'm just not going to respond. I'm just not going to explain myself. No, it's when you feel that urge that you stop yourself and you say, why am I feeling the urge to explain myself? Okay. And then you dig a little deeper. And then you say, well, because he should understand me. And if he doesn't understand me, then we're always going to have conflict. And, right? And you fill in the blanks. And those are your beliefs. The beliefs have to be challenged. They have to be questioned. And they have to be reframed with a new perspective. Because if not, you're operating on those old programs. And you will explain yourself, try to get them to understand you, try to get them to see that you weren't wrong or whatever, and keep staying hooked in the abuse with them. That's important. Okay. All right, now I want to talk about these things that happen as an impact of post-separation abuse. Okay, so you've already been through the abuse. You either get divorced, break up, leave, kick them out, they leave, you leave, whatever. But the things that are going to happen to you often, and not always, but this happens to a lot of people: hypervigilance, always looking over your shoulder, always worried about everything; anxiety, you'll feel it in your body, you'll feel it buzzing, you'll know it all the time; rumination, where you can't stop thinking about things, you want to have those conversations with them, you just want them to hear what you have to say or get the last word. Every time the phone rings, your body seizes up, your stomach drops. You might have difficulty trusting future partners. You might be very defensive. You might be very skeptical of people. You might be non-trusting. You might think everybody's going to cheat on you or hurt you, right? This can impact your relationships. You will feel exhausted, for sure. Maybe sometimes guilt or regret could come up about things. And then definitely self-doubt, because that's the thing that all women come to me with in the beginning, is they don't trust themselves. Most of them don't even love themselves. And then when we work through it, then we build that back up. But those are some serious impacts of this. And then, what happens is you get out, or you're not in that relationship anymore, and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I still struggling? Well, no wonder you're still struggling. One, you're under post-separation abuse. It's continuing. It's ramped up. And then you have all of these other things to deal with at the same time, because your nervous system is just living inside the same threat as it was before, but now even worse. Let's shift over to the healing part. What healing actually is like. Because what most people think is, if my ex would just stop doing these things, my life would be better. And in some ways, yes, I agree. But the problem is, we can't get our exes to stop being our exes. We can't get them to stop being narcissists. We can't get them to stop being assholes. We can't get them to just be kind and nice. Like, we couldn't even get them to do it while we were with them. So why do we think we're going to get them to do it when we're not? Right? When they're mad and angry that the supply is gone. So part of this is accepting who that person is. Like, literally accepting who they are, right? You don't expect a dog to meow like a cat. You expect the dog to bark like a dog, because that's what dogs do. Just like your ex behaves and always has behaved, probably always will behave. Okay? Now, does this mean they're always going to be at that high level? No. At some point, probably they get exhausted from doing this, and then they find a new supply to bother, to annoy, to create problems with, right? But the more you give them in that supply, meaning your reactions, your emotions, the more they're going to keep coming back. That's why I have to say, go back to that gray rock, okay? And less is best. More opens the door. I say this all the time. Less is best. So if they send you a text that says, hey, little Johnny needs to be picked up from school at whatever time today, since I can't pick him up, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, you're such a shitty mom. I can't believe you did this or that or the other, right? They slide that mean, nasty part about you in there to try to get a reaction from you, of course. So we got to be smarter and more strategic, think steps ahead of these people. Instead, you just say, okay, I'll be there at whatever time, period, or thumbs up, or whatever, right? The urge is like, we often feel like we have to defend ourselves. We often have to fight back. We have to say our piece. We have to get the last word, right? And those are the things that get you in trouble, draw you back into that conflict, okay? So when you're healing, it is acceptance of who this person is. That's big, right? It's hard, but it is part of it. It's also learning boundaries, learning not only how to set boundaries, and also learning how to keep them and stick to them. Documenting things. During this time, it's going to be really important to keep record of if they are abusing you verbally in text messages. How many times do they call in one day? How many times do they text in one day? Is this considered harassment at some point? Do you need to get an app for communicating between the two of you? Do you need a co-parenting coordinator? What do you need? right? Do you need a lawyer to intervene? Documentation about all the things, documentation about the finances, documentation about them not picking your children up, that whatever it is, right? That's going to be important. So real recovery is you taking back your power. I have good boundaries. I document everything, right? I am emotionally detached and gray. I know how to regulate my nervous system. I know what's real versus what's not as far as threats go. I focus on my life. I focus on what's important to me, my kids, my health, my safety, my hobbies, my interests, my family, right? That's what recovery actually is. We have to pull ourselves out of this dance with these people. You already left. Let's not continue to get pulled back into the dance, right? Because it's not a pretty one. All right, so if you are dealing with post-separation abuse, I just want you to know that if you're struggling with this is so important. It doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. Just because things got worse, doesn't mean you should go back so they can be better, quote unquote, better, right? Because there were times that it was so bad for me, and I wrote this in my first book, When Tears Leave Scars, when I was on a puddle on the bathroom floor, thinking, oh my God, maybe I should just go back. If this is so hard, it wasn't even as hard when I was there. Now, was it hard when I was there? Absolutely. There was a reason that I left, right? But because things ramped up, and again, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm trying to prepare everybody, okay? But if you're struggling post-separation abuse, this does not mean that you should go back. This does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means they're ramping up their efforts to harm you. You just need the tools, and you just need the strategies, and you just need the support to help you through it. This does not mean you're weak. It does not mean it's going to be like this forever, because it isn't. And I'm proof of that, and lots and lots and lots of my clients are too. The more we take our power back, the less that they can affect us. And then they go find some other toy to play with, okay? So you are navigating something that most people never have to navigate and are not prepared for. And so that's why I want this episode to support you and help you. And I want you to know this too. This is important. That your healing and your recovery after you get out of an emotionally abusive or abusive relationship, your healing is not measured by whether or not your ex stops hurting you. Okay? So if you're still experiencing abuse and pain and struggle and suffering, that doesn't mean you're not healing. Okay? Because sometimes, if you got out of a relationship and you moved across the country and you blocked your ex, you don't have any kids with them, and you never had to see them again, right? Well, you could still not have healing. Your healing is measured by how much of your life, how much of your peace and your energy and the future that you want that you reclaim. That's what it's measured by. It's measured by the action that you take, not by how your ex is or isn't showing up. All right, as we wrap up today's episode, I hope this conversation has helped you to better understand post-separation abuse and why healing doesn't actually begin the moment a relationship ends. I mean, for some people, maybe it does, but for a lot of people, it doesn't. So if you're still struggling with things like rumination, anxiety, exhaustion, self-doubt, or just that they're taking up too much space in your mind, then please know you are not alone. This is so common, and there is a real path forward to move through this. And if you want additional support, go to my website through the link in the show notes, www.radiateandrise.com, and you'll find a free 5-day guided mentor audio series. And in this 5 days, you're getting an email with an audio from me guiding you through how to heal some of these wounds. A deconditioning workbook is included, and then access to the My Sound Mind library as an introduction. And so give it a try. Check it out. See how I can support you. And it's totally free. My website also, just so you know, I redid the whole thing to make it really simple to navigate, to help you find the right support based on where you're at in your healing journey. So whether you're still in the relationship, maybe you've left but you can't stop thinking about it, or you're dealing with post-separation abuse, Or maybe you're just ready to rebuild and move forward. All of these options are out there for you. Just click the button and it will give you the resources that you need. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, because I know that there are so many podcasts out there that you could be listening to, and I'm grateful that you chose this one. So until next time, please take good care of yourself, be gentle with your healing, and remember, peace is possible even if it doesn't feel that way today. Talk to you next week.